Yo, the reviews are in for Black Sunday at Timeline Theater. They're calling the new play a particularly poignant and poetic drama, spectacularly immersive, ooh, that's some praise, and a spellbinding 90 minutes of theater. That's why you don't want to miss the world premiere of this homegrown show, which tells a haunting story of climate change, migration, and family in the days leading up to one of the most infamous dust storms in 1930s Texas. Black Sunday runs through June 29th at Timeline Theater in Lakeview. For more info and tickets, head to timelinetheater.com. What's up, y'all? Make sure you stay tuned after the roundup. CityCast Chicago executive producer Simone Alicea will be joining us for a conversation sponsored by Chicago's Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events about Millennium Park's 20th anniversary. Stick around to learn more. Today on CityCast Chicago, Mayor Johnson is reopening the Roseland Mental Health Clinic. Where would you want to work remotely in the city? And the Chicago Reader returns to weekly publishing. Helping me break it all down is producer Michelle Navarro. It's Tuesday, June 4th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. Morning, Michelle. How you feeling?
I'm feeling good. How are you feeling, Jacoby?
I'm doing well. How was your weekend, G?
It was nice. It's feeling like summer. Even though it's like not super hot out yet, it's really feeling like summer. How was your weekend?
It was good. It's supposed to be picking up. I mean, right now we kind of going through that like random thunderstorm every couple hours like time right now. But from what I've seen, it looks like it's supposed to get in the high 80s early this week. Again, we will have some rolling thunderstorms. So, kind of prepare for that. Think about that. But every Tuesday, if you're new to CityCast Chicago, we're thinking about some of the news that's happening in our city, looking at some stuff we saw on the internet, but also celebrating some of our friends, some good news like we do every day. Michelle, we got to start off with a big announcement that came out of the Johnson administration last week, and it took place on the far south side. Mayor Johnson campaigned on an initiative called Treatment Not Trauma, which essentially proposes that we reduce the police budget and fund reopening mental health clinics and alternatives to 911 responses. In his most recent $16 billion budget, we didn't see no changes to the police budget, but we did see $5.2 million allocated to reopening 2 city-run mental health clinics and expanding services. And it seems like Johnson is delivering on that campaign promise. Can you catch us up here?
Yeah, so last Thursday, Mayor Brandon Johnson announced that the Roseland Mental Health Clinic will reopen on the far south side by the end of the year. And just like a reminder to listeners, this clinic, the Roseland Mental Health Clinic, was one of the 14 that had closed since 1989. Back then, the city had a total of 19 mental health clinics throughout the city. But by 2011, there were only 5 due to closures from former mayors Rahm Emanuel and Daley back in 90s.
Mm-hmm. And people fiercely protested. I mean, they had been calling for mental health clinics to be reprioritized since, like you said, we started seeing those closures in the late 1980s, early 1990s. But when Rahm closed these down, I mean, it was very, it was a watershed moment. And then when Mayor Lightfoot came into the picture, she campaigned on reopening these clinics. This is something that I think brought a lot of support to her camp. But then when she got into office, she and the Chicago Department of Public Health really prioritized these private public partnerships where basically you saw the city giving out grant money, giving out money to private clinics, to nonprofit organizations, to nonprofit clinicians and clinics to offer more mental health services. But even with that, people said, but what about city run? If we're relying on the private market to be the main resource for individuals in the city, then that kind of takes some responsibility off of the city to provide these resources. But one thing we saw with Brandon Johnson's campaign is, again, someone coming in, making that promise to actually reopen some of the buildings we saw shutter, some of the former sites, or opening new sites that represent city-run clinics.
Yeah, so the city will also add mental health services to a Chicago Department of Public Health clinic in Pilsen in August, and inside the Legler Regional Library in West Garfield Park as soon as June. A city commission report also says that the future clinic openings might be based on current need and not on past closures. The report also outlines plans to ramp up non-police responses to mental health emergencies and other clinical service, which I think is incredibly important. You know, like a lot of people have been responding to the idea that because of the closures of these mental health facilities throughout the last couple decades, police and, like 911 responses are usually held with police, which people, advocates have said it's not the best, it's not the best way to address these issues. Police, they are not social workers.
They are not behavioral health scientists or clinicians. This is not what they are being trained necessary for to make these type of mental health interventions, and relying on it has become our public safety / public health model. And like you said, advocates have been asking us to move away from this for decades.
Our newsletter editor, Sydney Madden, put together a really helpful explainer for everybody over in Hey Chicago. Find it now on our website at chicago.citycast.fm, to kind of look over the history of mental health clinics in the city.
One thing that I saw in the WBEZ article that I read, and it relates to this recommendation that we be making needs-based assessments. The neighborhoods Pilsen and West Garfield Park were picked for needs-based reasons. Legler is one of the busiest distribution sites for the overdose reversing nasal spray Narcan, according to the WBEZ article. So the way that these decisions are being made are not only trying to address these longstanding closures that neighborhoods have been fighting, but also trying to add resources where they're needed. The working group that you mentioned had roughly 40 recommendations. They include things like not only adding more services, but also prioritizing 24/7 access. And I think most importantly, making sure that Chicagoans know, as we've seen just over the last 4 years, just because we have these public health initiatives does not mean that information gets to the people most vulnerable, the people who need this. And when we think about how much attention has been put on the closures over the last 10 years, I can imagine some people check out of the conversation and don't even realize that Chicago has the 5 clinics that it already has. Seeing the city expand its awareness campaigns, continuing to reduce the stigma, letting people know that mental health services are not just for if you are in crisis or someone in your family is in crisis, right? It's for so many different reasons. So I think not only expanding these services, but expanding how we think about them, how we involve with them, how we interact with them, is going to be critical. I think one of the biggest questions that has come out of this reporting and this announcement that the Johnson administration is going to have to work to persuade Chicagoans is, can the city maintain these clinics when it comes to financially? Like, I do not stand with the decisions made by the Daley and the Emanuel administration, but their justification was that it cut costs. The Lightfoot administration said the best use of the city's dollars was to invest in nonprofit organizations. And so as we see, we are running out of some of that federal relief money. The biggest question remaining is going to be, not only can the city continue to deliver on the promise to reopen mental health clinics, but can it afford to hire the necessary people, right?
Going back to what you were saying about hoping that this reaches a larger audience and people use them, like that's one of the ways, right? Mm-hmm. People actually using these services, hearing about it, proving to the city that they are worth, financing. Johnson's plan is estimated to cost around $21 million this year, but by 2027, the cost will climb to $37 million. So it's definitely going to cost the city. So I'm interested to see how he finagles that in his budgets moving forward.
At Evernorth Health Services, we believe costs shouldn't get in the way of life-changing care, and we're doing everything in our power to make it possible. Behavioral health solutions that also keep your projections at their best? It's possible. Pharmacy benefits that benefit your bottom line? It's possible. Complex specialty care that cares about your ROI? It's possible. Because we're already doing it. All while saving businesses billions. That's Wonder made possible. Learn more at evernorth.com/wonder.
Something I saw on the internet last week is this new initiative called Work from Summertime Shy. It's a campaign spearheaded by the likes of Choose Chicago, which is one of the city's tourism arms, World Business Chicago, one of its economic development arms, and some others. And it wants to get people who work from home, like me and you, to leave our crib, leave our home offices, and come to co-working spaces and city attractions downtown. Now, we've been having this conversation a lot that people are not returning to work in the loop in the same numbers as pre-pandemic, right? For a ton of reasons. And I think one of the biggest reasons, if I'm thinking on my own, I like working from home, G. I enjoy it. I love the routine I have. I like coming into my office. I like chilling. I think some companies have allowed people to work from home, but I also understand that foot traffic in the loop is a big part of the economic lifeblood of downtown Chicago. And so from now until August 31st, folks can reserve spaces at places like the Hoxton Hotel, Prudential Building, and existing co-working joints. Some cost money, some are free. You can go to a link we'll drop in the show notes to learn more. But also places like Navy Pier, the Cultural Center, the Museum of Contemporary Art will have these special remote work days and events throughout the summer. Michelle, how you feel about this? Like, again, our entire City Cast Chicago team works from home. When we meet up, we sometimes go to a co-working space, but sometimes we go to the library. Sometimes we go to Mario's Italian Lemonade. How do you feel about this drive to get people to come into downtown and work?
I actually am a big fan of this plan, just because, like, even though I love working from home because, like, you cut that commute time. Back in the day, you had to add in that extra little 40, 30 minutes to get to work, which you're not getting paid for. That's just out your own time. And so it feels good to, wake up and just kind of be in your comfy area and work from there for sure. But it does kind of get a little tiring. Like sometimes I would catch myself thinking like, man, it's kind of nice when you kind of get ready and have like go somewhere with a purpose. And so it's kind of cool that we have an excuse. It's kind of like a field trip. It's going to feel like a field trip, but you know what? So you were excited to go on a field trip, but the teacher would give you a worksheet that you had to fill out, but you're just like, I don't matter because we're still outside.
I like the energy you bring into this.
You're like, nah.
I am on the other side. Leave me alone. Leave me alone. So I worked in downtown because I taught at DePaul. I taught at Harold Washington pre-pandemic. And so I had to come into downtown 4 days a week. Growing up as a kid, thinking about, like, I didn't imagine working in downtown Chicago, but when I would come downtown, all I would see was like this hustle and bustle, people moving everywhere. I remember coming to drop my mom off downtown. It was just like, that's where grown folks go to get that money to come back to the crib. And so doing it as an adult, I'm not gonna lie, the glamour, the romanticization of that as a kid, completely gone. So the idea of coming to a co-working space, even going to like the MCA and the Cultural Center are my escapes. Those are places I go to get away from the work week. Those are places I go to get away from our Airtable and Slack and Gmail. And so mixing those two things, I don't know. Like, I agree. Working from home can be difficult, especially if you have limited space. Like before I moved here, my office was in my closet, was in my bedroom, was in my hangout space. So having everything on top of each other, I definitely was like, I want to get out. But now that I get up, like you said, get dressed, get ready with some purpose, and then come to my separate like podcast studio, I love it. But with that being said, if we're thinking beyond downtown, trying to revitalize the loop, but if you were thinking about the perfect places you could go, just took your computer, or if we set up for a day to record, like we record in this episode of the podcast, where would be your perfect place in the city to record a couple episodes of City Cast Chicago?
This was actually Simone's idea, and we were talking about this earlier, but I would love to hang out in the conservatory because it's like you're technically, it feels like you're outside, but you're not. And I feel like when I work outside of where I usually work, I just feel a little bit more creative because there's just like different things are happening. And I just feel like, I don't know, like even though I'm still doing routine stuff, like I'm still going to be checking the Slack, I'm still going to be checking the Gmail, I'm still going to be in like, assembling the podcast episodes. I still feel like just having like a different background, a different like white noise around me would just really do me good. And I feel like the conservatory would be perfect for that, because it's like I'm gonna feel like I'm just like in a little outside jungle, but really, you know, I'm in a nice temperature controlled environment, which is very well taken care of thanks to the workers at the conservatory. But other spots too, like being on like a nice little patio situation where I can have a little drink, some food, and just like vibe out in a nice patio or a rooftop. I think that would be really cool, actually.
I have some chaotic choices in terms of where I would want to do, and then I have some relaxing choices. So I'll give you the relaxing choices first.
Okay.
Now, I know I just said the museums are like my getaway, so I'm contradicting myself a little bit. But if I had to think about one that I'd like to record at, it's probably Adler Planetarium. I just feel like recording in there with the visuals behind us would look dope as hell. So that's just more aesthetic. Another one, the South Shore Nature Sanctuary. It comes up a lot. It's one of my favorite places to go, to that, even though it's like it's not too big, it still feels like a small little getaway. I got hotspot, so I ain't even worried about the internet. I would hope I could use the South Shore Cultural Center's internet, but I got hotspot just in case. And then some chaotic choices. One, the CTA, the Red Line, and I'm talking past like 63rd. I would love to record a podcast on the Red Line, the sounds and sights of the Red Line, live from it. And then the 606. And that's more just like I would love like a video podcast idea of us, like the camera on one side of the track and us on the other side. You can hear the recording filter well through the mic, but you just see people walking and blasting by on their bikes, scooters, all kinds of things. I think that might be a CityCast Chicago commercial, if I'm being honest, just recording on the 606. But speaking of other places to get outside in Chicago, we're going to be talking about alfresco dining, because I know people ain't thinking about working when they go outside. They're thinking about eating good. So we're going to be talking about patios, rooftops, other places to get outdoors. But what do y'all think? If you're listening and you're like, I have been cooped up in the house for years now, I'm not trying to go to an office, but rather come to co-working spaces, come to hotels, come to museums. If you feeling that, let me know, but also tell me the perfect place you'd love to work outside in Chicago. 773-780-0246. Leave us a voicemail or a text. Before we get out of here, a little piece of good news here before I give us some good news. We got some citywide good news today, dealing with our friends over at the Chicago Reader. Michelle, take it away.
Yeah, so the Chicago Reader returns to weekly publishing. This is a huge deal because the Reader has been one of the nation's most influential alt-weekly publications, since its launch back in 1971. And for the last 4 years, the Reader has been publishing bi-weekly.
And their publishers have listed a couple reasons for their return. Everything from trying to keep up with Chicago's fast-paced news cycle. Obviously, the Reader Online does great work across the board. But like they said, people still love that physical paper. I still love going to pick up a Reader outside of the box, especially when they're naming us the best podcast in the city 3 years in a row during their Best of Chicago series, right? It also seems like there is a bit of recovery. I remember when we talked about this back in 2022, not only talked about the legacy of the paper, but also talked about like what the future looks like as we are moving into a increasingly online digital landscape. And so it is good to see that they are coming back in this way. I believe that the weekly schedule picks up tomorrow. And so that's very exciting. If you have been listening to CityCast Chicago for any amount of time, then you've heard from some of our friends over at the Chicago Reader. I think there are over 1,100 Reader boxes in the city of Chicago. They have a map. We'll drop a link to that in the show notes. I'm really excited for this. All of the stories that Michelle and I talked about today, learn more, please, by visiting our show notes. We got links to all of the stories there, but also tap in with our website, chicago.citycast.fm, for the latest headlines. I want to give a huge thank you to our producer, Michelle Navarro. It's always great talking to you, my friend.
Likewise, Jacoby. Thank you.
Now we've got a segment sponsored by Chicago's Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events. Executive producer Simone Alisea is chatting with Madiam Chum, the program director of performing arts at DCASE, about their events happening this summer.
Hey, I'm executive producer Simona Lisea here with Mariam Cham, program director of performing arts at the Chicago Department of Cultural Affairs and Events, aka DCASE. Mariam, can you tell me what is DCASE and what is your role there?
Sure. So DCASE is our nickname. So it stands for the City of Chicago's Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events. So we do multiple things, but mainly we support artists and cultural organizations. We invest in the creative economy and we expand access and participation in the arts throughout Chicago's 77 neighborhoods. And so within my role here at DCASE, I'm the program director of performing arts. So I work with a small and mighty team that collaboratively produces many of the city's best iconic events.
Well, we're here today because Millennium Park is turning 20 years old. It's almost hard to believe. This is really the jewel of Chicago's downtown. Mariam, I'm curious, do you have a favorite memory from Millennium Park?
I have so many. I was like, it's so difficult to choose one, but I think some of my favorite memories have been a lot of the dance companies that we featured over the years. So Hubbard Street, and we had Future Kings one year. And then last year with the Millennium Park Summer Music Series, we had the opportunity, the great honor to give a tribute to the iconic jazz pianist, Ramsey Lewis, and hold his tribute concert. So that was just electrifying in the Pritzker Pavilion.
Yeah, I think most Chicagoans know that the summer programming, it always hits at Millennium Park. It's always great. I am there pretty much every summer, at least one time. So let's start with some of the old standbys. What's coming back this summer that people can expect?
Yeah, so excited that the Chicago Gospel Music Festival is returning and also the Chicago House Music Festival. So those will actually take place on the same weekend, June 1st for Gospel Fest, and the Chicago House Music Festival is coming back on Sunday, June 2nd. We invite everyone to come join us in the park. We have a great family-friendly event taking place that day in partnership with Slow Mo and Kiddo. So that'll be our Queer Fam Pride Jam.
Another one that I'm excited about too is the Chicago Blues Festival. This is something that my dad travels from Hawaii to come and join me for. It's also celebrating a birthday, right?
Absolutely. It's turning 40 years. So 40 years our special number for this summer. So the Chicago Blues Festival, it's a globally attractive event. We're so glad that your dad is coming to join us. And we do think that he'll really enjoy this year's festival. It's going to take place in Millennium Park and also a special Thursday kickoff at Ramova Theater. And so what's really great about that event, so let your dad know that he will see one of Buddy Guy's last performances. So we're really excited to feature that on Sunday, June 9th. So it's going to be a great time in the park.
You mentioned the Queer Fam Pride Jam, but all of the events are family friendly, right?
Absolutely. All the events are family friendly for all ages. And so we have a lot of activations that happen on site specifically for children, but then also we understand that adults need breaks with their kids so they can visit any of our food vendors on site and visit the beautiful spaces that are just nice to enjoy in the park.
So in addition to those music festivals and music series, films in the park coming to Millennium Park, this is also, like we said, the 20th anniversary. So y'all are putting on a special 4-day celebration from July 18th through July 21st. Mariam, what's happening during those 4 days?
Yeah, so these are 4 jam-packed days in Millennium Park. And as we mentioned, all ages are welcome. And so Thursday, July 18th, we're partnering 2 of our really great programs, the Millennium Park Summer Music Series in Subalo. And so that will feature Fruco Isutesos. And so they're really a strong band that has 60 years of music making experience. So really invite everyone to join us out in the park for that. On Friday, July 19th, Grand Park Orchestra will be presenting Star Wars and more. On Saturday, July 20th, really excited about this. We'll have family-friendly activations happening in the North Promenade from 11 to 5. And so those will be art making and experiences of dance and music. But then also that evening, Grand Park Music Festival in partnership with DCASE will be presenting Common. And Sunday, we're going to continue with family-friendly programming throughout the day. But then that evening, we're welcoming back a special guest to the park. So that'll be Steve Silcurley, who actually performed when the park opened 20 years ago.
Oh,
so
wow.
This is going to be curated in partnership with his partner, Shannon Skip Says. And so it'll be a highlight of multiple acts that he's worked with over the years. So you'll definitely see a few of your favorites. And we're announcing that very soon. So more to come.
That sounds really special to bring back someone who performed at the original opening. But I gotta say, the one I am definitely looking forward to is the Grant Park Orchestra. I've seen them perform so many times over the years at Millennium Park doing. I really like musicals, so I've seen them do the pops and the different programs there. But I definitely know some Star Wars fans who are going to be into that.
Grant Park Music Festival never disappoints. They always keep this really innovative and fresh programming. So we definitely know people will have fun this summer.
So that is a lot that is going on. How can Chicagoans stay up to date on all the great performances and activities coming to Millennium Park during this 20th anniversary?
Absolutely. So we welcome everyone to visit us at millenniumpark.org to stay up to date with all the current events and in real time find out what's happening.
That's great. Again, that is millenniumpark.org. Mariam Cham is the Program Director of Performing Arts with the Chicago Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events. We're going to have that link for you again in the show notes, millenniumpark.org. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us, and I look forward to seeing you in the park this summer.
Now, you know I can't let you go without some good news. My good news is this Thursday, we are starting our regular check-ins with our summer correspondent, Greta Johnson. Longtime friend of the show, Greta is going to stop by to catch up, talk great things to look forward to on the weekends, and give us some great summer reads, whether you are chilling at the park or on the beach. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. We're happy to have Greta here. As always, we appreciate you for listening and reading. We're going to be back bright and early tomorrow talking about rooftops, patios, and all things outdoor dining. I'll talk to you then. Peace. Talking about outside, talking about